Advanced Principles Podcast, or APP, was created to be an outlet for like-minded individuals to share in the broader conversations on leadership, retail market updates, and incredible personal success stories. On APP, you will hear a collection of stories from the titans of the retail industry, as well as thought and practice leaders covering the spectrum of the economy. Please click the subscribe button and look for the newest episodes to be released. You're going to play with numerous Olympians and EPL stars and everything else. You know, would that satisfy you?
I don't know if I've told this story on a podcast, Brian. You're getting it first time.
Wells Thompson is the founder and CEO of Soccer Resilience, a company providing players, coaches, parents, and referees specialized mental fitness support and strategies to strengthen their resilience. Wells's career as a 9-year professional soccer player, where he was the number 5 overall pick in the 2007 MLS draft, as well as a 2010 MLS Cup champion, coach, entrepreneur, and ultra runner, adds a plethora of valuable experiences and insights. His faith, relationships, and the sport of soccer have played critical roles in shaping him into the man he is today. He is passionate about helping others reach their full mental, physical, and emotional potential on and off the field. All right, Wells Thompson, welcome to APP today. We're so excited to have you on. Such an impressive bio background, full of great life experiences. Super excited to kind of unpack the Wells Thompson life story and let everyone in on it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I was wondering what took you so long to get me on the show because, but I'm so glad to finally be here. Excited to sit down and talk to you, brother.
Yep, absolutely. Glad your schedule finally allowed for it and all the things that you have going on, which we're going to talk a lot about. So I'm glad that we're able to connect. And so kind of the first start, for anybody that doesn't know your background or history, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on the life of Wells Thompson and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, man. Got the greatest family in the world. My mom and my dad. And so I realized that more and more because I have 3 young kids now, all boys, 8, 5, and 3. And I'm like, man, it looks so easy to be a parent. It's freaking hard. Holy moly. But so I had great parents that gave me the world, played every sport growing up. Soccer was what I was best at, what I loved the most. So stuck with it. Never was supposed to play. I don't know how much you want me to get into that, but never was supposed to really play in college. By the time I was 16 years old, I was literally going to end up dead or in jail because the decisions I was making, I was what you call a dumbass. I'm sorry if I cussed on the podcast. Kids, I was a dumb fanny. I just didn't make good decisions as a kid. By the grace of God, I ended up walking on to Wake Forest, played there. And everybody knows college soccer, they know Wake's the best. So I was competing against some really good athletes, guys that captain our U.S. youth national team since they were in diapers. And I was just kind of a hometown scrub. And was drafted in 2007, 5th overall. So played 9 years professionally. And that was cool. Was able to live out my dream. It's kind of my dream as a kid. I don't know if it was really calculated. I just loved the game and kind of wanted to play as long as I could. I married my pre-K sweetheart. This is the best part of it right here. No joke. She's my first girlfriend in 3rd grade. She's the love of my life. We just celebrated 10 years and we have 3 young boys and a golden retriever.
The American dream right there.
The American dream. Yep.
Yep. Absolutely. So cool. And you've had a great post-playing career, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. But that's a long journey to cover with a lot of big milestones in there. So we're going to spend a little bit of time unpacking them. And certainly you said you played all sports as you were growing up. I would imagine that you were, talented at all of them, probably a high achiever. But you said, you weren't really expected to play even at the collegiate level, let alone the professional ranks. So what do you think changed? What kind of spun that around and got you believing that you are capable, you can compete, and you can continue to ride that dream out and continue to chase it?
Yeah, I think I always thought I could compete. I knew I was talented. My dad tells a story. I was 11 years old and we had a tournament down in Charleston, South Carolina. I ended up scoring. We won the tournament and I scored 11 of the team's 13 goals. And my dad actually took me out of school on Monday and was like, man, I think you can really, he recognized in him, in the talent in me. And it was really cool kind of hearing my dad share this with me, because I don't really remember it, but he was like, hey man, you can do this. You can be whatever you want. You're very talented. You can, but you have to make good decisions. And the way he says it is way more profound than me. It wasn't all about like being the best athlete. It was about like going after your dreams and doing it the right way and those sorts of things. So I think I always believed in myself. The decisions I made as a kid, especially in high school, almost didn't allow me to chase my dream, because it almost killed me, man. Literally almost killed me. I mean, I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol at a very early age. And every time I tell my story, I'm like, you are such an idiot, Wells. Like, why? You are an idiot. But I literally lived, I want to be known as the guy that just did the most drugs, that got effed up the most, that partied. And that's how I live my life, man. Actually, my parents say the straw that broke the camel's back is when I wanted to quit soccer. So I'd stopped going to school. I kind of ran away from home, and I was like, I want to quit soccer. And so my parents tricked me. They knew they had to intervene in my life to change my life. And thank God my parents had the resources to do that. And a lot of families don't. They tricked me to come home, and they hired guys to kidnap me in the middle of the night. And they drove me to what I call dumb fanny school. It was basically a lockdown facility, school for troubled kids that were just trying to get their life in order. So from 16 to 18, which are pretty critical years in terms of like wanting to play in college or, take your game to the next level, I spent a year and a half in a lockdown facility in upstate New York. And so I really kind of, I don't know if I consciously thought my dreams were dead then, but I did know that the sooner I learned pretty fast, the sooner I just started to follow the rules, that the sooner I could get out. So my parents took me out after 18 months. I came back to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, repeated my senior year. Just by the grace of God, I grew up like 5 minutes from Wake Forest campus. The coaches knew me, they knew who I was, and they were like, we have a spot for you, no scholarship. Actually, I think that was just the assistant coach. The assistant coach had to convince Jay Vidovich. I don't think Jay Vidovich wanted anything to do with me. Thank God he obliged and brought me on, because I loved every minute. And I didn't want to go close to home. I actually wanted to go really far away from home. But the opportunity was just too good to pass up, to go to Wake Forest, get an education, and play for, they're one of the premier teams in college soccer. So it was
cool.
Yeah.
And a great walk-on story, because you went from being a walk-on and maybe with the head coach begrudgingly allowing you to be a walk-on to having an impactful role during your time there, and then leading you up to being drafted for the MLS. So what kind of turned the corner with the coaches and your teammates on the field once you took that role as a walk-on?
Well, it's funny, because when I got drafted 5th overall 4 years later, the coach said, Wells, we thought you'd never play a day at Wake. And I was like, well, why'd you bring me here? You know what I mean? Like, geez. So even backtracking further, Winston-Salem was a smaller club. And so we were playing the big clubs of like Raleigh and Charlotte. And so if you know me, I'm a fighter. Always have chip on my shoulder, under mentality. I think a little of that comes from my brother. I have an older brother who's a great athlete, and every day looked like this. We'd go home from school. He beats me in basketball, chuck the basketball at him, and he beats me up. I just hated losing, but he taught me so many lessons during that time that, like, I look back on, like, man, that really prepared you for going to Wake. And so I look at the time of like getting shipped off to school, like that just prepared me when I went to Wake. And so I would also try out for like Olympic development program, which is like the best of the best in the state. They try out for Olympic development program, and I just never made it. Right. I never made it. And it's not like I didn't make it. I didn't make it past the second round, I don't think. Wow. And so I remember like Michael Jordan, I cried and I hated it. And I got those letters in the mail. But it pushed me. It motivated me. It inspired me to prove people wrong, to work harder. And so that all prepared me when I went to Wake, and I saw the reverse of that. Guys that captained our U.S. men's national team, since they were in diapers, they'd come in, and it'd be the first time they really struggled with playing time or with competition. And some of them didn't know how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so, often like I'm so thankful for those things. Right. And it's the down times and the hard things and the crappy things that really teach us and propel us later on in life if we choose to use them in that manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really impactful 4 years, and for you to have that internal fortitude, just to continue to fight, and kind of that underdog, the chip on your shoulder mentality. I don't think enough people have that anymore. And I think it's kind of a waning trait in our society. So it's really cool to hear the success and recent success, and that led to the professional ranks. So other than the Wake coaches telling you that they didn't think you'd ever play a minute while you're at Wake, what was draft night like, and the realization that, yes, I'm now going to be playing a game for a paycheck, something that I've always wanted to do and had amazing passion for? What was that feeling like?
Yeah, I think, I probably come off not as calculated as I am in terms of like my whole journey to play at a high level. Something was in me. Like I would come home from school, middle school, and do like ab workouts.
Wow.
Like I would wake up with my dad at like 5 a.m, go running when I was like 10. And so when I was sent off to school in New York, and I've actually never, I don't know if I've told this story on a podcast, Brian, you're getting it first time.
Premiere.
Like it's out there.
Yep, absolutely. World premiere.
So I just happened to have a mentor or a counselor at the school I was sent to that kind of ran the school, and he knew my ambitions to play pro soccer. So I was the only person in school history that had permission to run laps before breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Wow. It was a like 1/10 mile little track around our, we called them family rooms. They were families. And so I would wake up 5 a.m, and I'd go run before breakfast. I'd go out there 30 minutes before lunch and run. And so I was just super fit. And this translates to me going to college, because I realized that the easiest way to separate yourself from somebody else is to just be fitter than them, is to work harder than them. Because everything breaks down when you're tired, your mind, your body. And so I just would try to get in the best shape I could. And that really served me when I went to Wake. And I never forget. So Bobby Muse was the assistant coach. He's really the one that brought me onto Wake. He just said that he would go in after practice my freshman season to Jay Vidovich's office and say, "You got to play Wells. You got to play Wells." And Jay Vidovich would go, "Man, if only this guy and this guy would work like Wells." And so eventually Jay gave in, and he ended up starting to play me. I forget what your original question was. What was draft night like? This is a funny story. 3 days before the draft, Jay Vidovich calls me in and goes, "You need to go to Indianapolis where the draft was." And I was like, "What for?" And he was like, "It's for the draft, you idiot." And and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So me and my parents we spent our own money to go to the draft. And if you're like a top 10 draft pick, the league's going to fly you up and take care of you. So we went up, we knew who everybody was, and come draft night, we'd have a little section cornered off for the families. And so my dad gets the front row, and I'm like, "Dad, I'm going to be the only one sitting here." I don't blame him. I would have done the same thing. But I was sitting beside my best friend, Ryan Solly, who's a 2-time All-American at Wake. He was a midfielder at Wake, which I was a midfielder. I knew the Revolution liked me. They had the 11th pick. They ended up trading up for the 5th. And I was like, there goes my shot trade. It's like the brain's negativity. It's like, I think I'm automatically out of it. Well, they traded up for me because they liked me. And Don Garber, the commissioner, goes, "A midfielder from Wake Forest." And my buddy Ryan says he starts to stand up. Like they think they're going to come over. And they say Wells Thompson, and everything's a little bit of a blur after that. It was a dream come true. I hugged my parents, hugged Ryan, try not to trip walking up the stairs, shaking the commissioner's hand. The coach that drafted me was Scottish. I couldn't understand a word he said. Literally. I was like, "What? What are you saying?" Steve Nicol, he's like one of the best 11 players to ever play for Liverpool. He's an awesome guy. And eventually I was just everything he said to me, I just started saying, yeah, wow. Oh yeah. So it was special, man. I mean, not many people get that opportunity. And there were millions of times in my life where I never thought it would happen, but it did. And I'm thankful. This is a big part of me, like focusing on the positive of my career, because I don't tend to do that. Actually, I played 9 years professionally. And as a matter of fact, my wife, Daphne, 3 weeks ago I said something about my career and it was positive. And she goes, "That's the first time I've ever heard you say something positive about your career." I was like, "I'm doing it. I'm changing my mindset, my perspective." So
yeah, good for you. Good for you.
She's yelling in the other room saying, "Go."
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So such a cool experience. And, for the hundreds of thousands and millions of kids that grow up playing sports and have aspirations to play professionally, I can't even imagine what that realization is like. So how long did it really take to settle in? And you kind of fully realize, like, okay, I'm moving now from North Carolina to Boston and the New England area. I'm playing in the professional ranks.
Yeah. I mean, pretty quickly, my dad says, like, if you ask my dad the story, he'll say, like, we were the Beverly Hillbillies. Like, we knew who everybody else was. They didn't really know who we were. But my dad says it was immediate change after I got drafted. Everybody was coming up and like talking to me and being like, "Oh, Wells." And so it was the first time in my life that I had gone from like the underdog to like, the top dog.
Mhm.
And I think it set in pretty quick. Yeah, my teammate Ryan Solly, who I was telling you about, was actually drafted in the second round to the Revolution. So we drove up there together, and yeah, just didn't really know what to expect. I was excited for the opportunity. Yeah, so it was cool. Honestly, sometimes it feels like it never happened. I wish I could go back, right, and enjoy it a little bit. That's life.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah, very cool. So you went up there, and immediately the team had success. You had impactful time. I
Yeah.
believe you guys, in your first or second year, you won the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, correct? And
Yeah. First year.
first year there. And so what was that like, being in that environment and not only joining a team, but then joining a successful and a cup winning team?
Yeah, so they were, Clint Dempsey was there. He had just left the year I came in. Taylor Twellman, they drafted a bunch of scrubs like Michael Parkhurst, and he's great, by the way. James Riley, a lot of really big name people, right? And so it was a good team to go to. They had lost 2 years in a row in the MLS Cup finals. And we ended up making it to the finals that year. Honestly, it could have been a rookie. It could have been a dream rookie season. So I ended up starting our very first game in Chicago. And I realized during that time that, well, I should backtrack a little bit, because I'm sometimes, and this just came to me, but I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but I make it seem real rosy. Like they gave you a huge contract. They actually brought me in and they said, "We want you to take a developmental contract." And I was like, "Why would you draft me 5th overall?" I had an agent. I called him and said, "What should I do?" He said, "You should take it." I fired him because I was like, well, "You're not even going to like try to freaking get a deal for me." And so I was like, it was a big difference. Development contracts, this 2007 was like 18 grand before taxes, right? And a senior roster spot, which means my development contract, I wouldn't have been guaranteed. They could cut me anytime during the year, and a senior roster spot would have been guaranteed for the year, but that was still like $35,000.
Wow.
And so they said, "Okay, Wells," and this is one of the decisions I'm most proud I've made in my life. They said, you can either take the developmental contract or you can play for the senior roster spot. So basically all of preseason, I was on trial, right? Wow. I was a 5th overall pick, but I was on trial. I just remember like being so confident, and I played really, really well in preseason, and I earned the senior roster spot. So, cool. Yeah, and it could have been a dream season. So we won the U.S. Open Cup. I scored the game-winning goal actually to give the Revolution their first ever trophy. Wow. We made it to the MLS Cup finals. I played the whole finals, but unfortunately we ended up losing. So it was the 3rd year in a row the Revs had lost in the finals. 4th out of the past 6 years. We'd go around and people would have bill signs for us. It sucked.
That would be tough, no doubt. So, and then a few years after that, you were traded to Colorado Rapids, which is where you and I first met. And
yes,
again, early on in your career there, you guys had a tremendous success. So, one, what was the emotional ride like, finding out that you've been traded? And then 2, going from one locker room to another, and of successful franchises that were on the up and up.
It was really difficult to make the transition to pro sports. Wake Forest was a family. It felt like that. And everybody was your age. You're kind of going through the same things. The professional scene was different. You had people from all over the world. bigger personalities that were making money. It was more about business. So I had a great first season. The second season, I really struggled, had an injury that I had to deal with. And by the third season, I was basically, me and the coaching staff we were both okay to part ways with each other. We had both recognized we didn't get, maybe we should look for different options here. And so I just remember that off season. I think I was traded like January 20th, which preseason starts first week of February, if not the last week of January. I remember that whole off season just hoping my agent would call me every single day and tell me that I was traded. I wanted a fresh start. And so I was traded at the perfect time. I was traded to Colorado, won MLS Cup that year. I loved Colorado. I got to meet you, man. Jeez, you're such a blessing in my life. I mean that. And it was the start of a new adventure. I mean, when I think about my career, I think Colorado is what I think about the most. I think the MLS Cup has a lot to do with that. I think the team has a lot to do with that. The area, just the people that I was able to meet. So it was difficult, like transitioning, but I transitioned later in my career mid-season, and that sucked really bad. So I was thankful that it was the beginning of the season and I was able to start fresh with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys came in, and that was just a great group of guys. Certainly you could see your passion for the game out on the field. And, when you look at it, and certainly at that time, I think it's growing in prominence and recognition, being the MLS and soccer as a sport here domestically. But even back in 2010, I don't think it was widely recognized for what it really was, that you were the top of the top for the American League. That was a global league. I mean, there were players from I don't know how many countries represented just in your locker room, let alone the rest of the league. What did that feel like, hoisting that cup with your teammates, the recognition and realization that you were the preeminent leading team in the MLS, and then did all the things that come with that? You went to the White House, celebrated it. You had a fan day. What was that experience like for you?
It's good and bad. I found out like 5 minutes before the MLS Cup finals I wasn't starting, that was a freaking dagger. Was when we won the cup, all that went away, and I was really, really excited about it. And my family was there to celebrate with me. My fiance, my fiance was there to celebrate. Maybe she wasn't my fiance then, but she was there to celebrate with me. It's part of what made me who I am. That drive I was never happy with coming off the bench or not playing. I always wanted to play and be the best. And as a matter of fact, that off season was probably the best off season I had. I came back in the most incredible shape I've ever been in my life. It just really pushed me. It motivated me because the MLS Cup is great. I wanted to be a bigger part of it. And for me, I was a big part of the MLS Cup, and everybody on the team was, right, even if they didn't play. But it's for me, I was just never comfortable or okay with being second fiddle. And so it was a phenomenal experience. Got to go to the White House, shake Obama's hand. What's really cool about it, I was recognized for the work that I did in and around the Denver community with the homeless. Obama recognized me in front of everybody. That was really, really cool. I was thankful for that. But yeah, I mean, it was, after every trophy I got, I expected it to fulfill me. Like, I'm good, I can die, and it never did. And so, that's the challenge with what I call worldly things, right? They're great, you celebrate them, but nobody knows that. Like, I was back in Colorado recently speaking to two high school teams, and I goes, does anybody know who I am? And one person from each group did. I was so thankful one person did. I was like, it made my life, because it's easily forgotten. The next day, people were like, are you going to win it again? And that sort of thing. So awesome achievement. So thankful that I was able to experience it, but it didn't fulfill me.
Yeah. And I think, we'll talk about that when we talk about what you're currently doing, because as I sit back as a fan and I listen in, thinking of my own kids' journeys and how amazing it would be to look back, and I'm sure your parents feel it. So you're drafted in the first round. you win a US Open Cup, you win an MLS Cup. You spent almost a decade playing professionally and yet weren't fulfilled. And I think that will kind of get into the journey that you were led to. And all those stories are written for a very specific reason. And, the path that you took and continue to take, I think is very specific because your greatest impact in life, is going to continue off the pitch, as you're now impacting thousands and thousands as we get into it. So, but when we look back at your career, I imagine going in, if somebody would have sat with you your freshman year at Wake when you were, still fighting adamantly for playing time at the collegiate level and said, listen, Wells, you're going to end up being a starter here. You're going to end up being drafted. You're going to end up being drafted in the first round, the 5th overall pick. You're going to win a US Open Cup. You're going to travel the globe playing the game that you love. You're going to win an MLS Cup. You're going to play with numerous Olympians and EPL stars and everything else. Would that satisfy you? What do you think your answer would have been as a freshman?
Wow, that's a great question. I've actually never been asked that question. I think I would have taken it. I think I would have said, yeah, like count me in for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing how life results can impact our perspective, right? Because I would agree with you. But I think now, knowing you and a little insider story that we'll kind of get to for the rest of the audience is I think you're way more fulfilled now than certainly when I knew you when you were playing at the highest levels and competing and in that locker room on a day-to-day basis.